Well, let me get a drink. Oh, never mind.
Go ahead. You can have a drink. Go ahead. It's all right. This will be our open. Would be you taking your drink.
Let's
So
do it.
Jeff Lutz, as always, glad to see you on a Wednesday afternoon. And I've been having a lot of fun. I can hardly stand. I get up in the morning. I can't even get out of bed. I've got to grab the phone and find out what has Donald Trump done today. And today, something happened. I don't know what, but the stock went down a lot and it's continuing down in the after hours. You're an analyst. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not Mr. What happened every day kind of I'm more looking at the fundamentals. I when I checked earlier, I wasn't overly impressed with the volume. Yeah, at end of the day at I guess 50, I mean, maybe this didn't update. I want to check it again just to make sure. But if we ended it around uh yeah, 56 million on a 92 million average, I
Wow.
mean, that wasn't
Yeah.
to me, that's not a compelling message. That's not a message from the market. If you see 120 million shares,
Right.
150 million, okay, I think, people are whatever. Everything, I mean, I think this goes back to Tesla. I think everything on social media is amplified
Mhm.
and, bombastic things go viral. So we're being inundated with this. Normally before Twitter X, you just watch your nightly news and you get whatever filtered view you get. And now we have, the CEO of the company that we're following. He was literally in the room where it's happening and making it happen. So we're seeing more of it. And it's causing people to emote in different ways. And yeah, I would just remind people, I think there's two things. One is I don't think there's anybody I think it is kind of bizarre if you do agree with everything your president or leader does. I don't think any of us, I don't think you and I do. I think there's things that we would probably approach or do differently, but we don't know all the constraints. Uh, and then the other thing is like if you're more worried about how Doge is doing what Doge is doing versus what they're finding, I think you have the wrong priorities.
Yeah.
And and there's just a lot of like made up stuff. I mean, this is an office. This is Article 1. This is commissioned by the President of the United States. They have read-only access. They supply recommendations, and the executive branch decides, the president decides if they execute on those recommendations. He doesn't, Elon doesn't have the authority to govern.
Right.
And that's it. I mean, to me, that's the idiot's kind of handbook to like what's happening here. And it's not everything the media is saying. Just like the media yesterday took this surprise announcement with Gaza and just turned it into, all kinds of the most horrible terms in history. They turned it into, and I mean, I I don't want to go down that path or that rat hole in this conversation. I think there's more development, there's more work that would need to be done. But the whole idea is like, is there something different we should be doing to approach this situation to help the people that are there get to end state faster so they have a life that they want to live. So yeah, I just think everything in the media is distorted, and it's even worse. Now that we have the you can choose whatever filter you want on X. So I mean, now that we have whatever filter you want to see on X or no filter at all, it's just interesting what the media does. But I'm more interested in what Doge is finding versus what Doge is like. Are they have cots in there? Or are they like whatever? I mean, all that stuff. I'm more interested in what they're finding.
Not only what they're finding, but what their goal is. So this
Yeah.
has been one of my big objections is why are you talking to me about some possible methodology problems that you think might exist, but which you don't have any evidence for, and which you don't even know what the legal background is for what they're doing, but you're jumping to all these conclusions, but you haven't even looked at the purpose of Doge. And the purpose of Doge to me is to get interest rates down. Okay, there's
Yeah.
some steps in the middle, but that's what Elon says. Elon said it again yesterday. He says, "No, our goal here is that interest rates are sitting here at ridiculous highs given that we're only supposedly at 2.5% inflation, we're sitting here with 4.8 the other day on the 10-year. This is nonsense. This is nuts. And there's a reason for that. And it's because government's overspending. So if we cut the overspending, then we get the results, which we got today, a 10 basis point drop on
Yeah.
the 10.
Yeah, and I was surprised. I heard a lot of Fed governors coming out today, and Goolsbee was saying, they're not sure of the path of inflation now with tariffs. And if you're equating, first off, tariffs don't increase inflation in isolation. They don't increase the money supply. There's no more money supply to chase the higher cost goods unless you add money to the money supply.
Right.
And that's been the problem for the
Right.
United States. So if you don't add the money to the money supply, then it's a different kind of management of pricing, and you may get less demand as a result of these things potentially being higher prices potentially passed to the consumer. That's the other just huge misunderstanding, is that people think that the 25% literally goes on the shelves. So if your item was $100 yesterday, it's $125 tomorrow. And you have to understand the market you're in, the elasticity, and the ability for the importer exporter to burden share. And there's not one size fits all to that answer. But again, that it doesn't fit in 160 characters. So people want to say it's a tax on
Well,
Americans, and
well,
that
I've
fits
been
in
trying.
160 characters, and that's where we go. And
I,
so yeah, so we just don't have enough proper ground truth conversation on these topics. It can be brief, it can be simple, it can be simplified for people. But yeah, we had a pretty wild weekend, starting with the threat of tariffs, the tariffs coming off. And then, yeah, you've had earnings last week, you've had earnings, more tech earnings this week. And yeah, again, the Fed, they can't have a view of tariffs of like, oh, I better increase interest rates so I can make the cost of capital higher for the higher cost goods. Like, so I don't understand the thinking. But this is where we're at. I think I would love to see the Treasury Secretary, just walk over to the Fed. And I know they're supposed to be separate. I know everything, yeah, but they're not. I mean, to think that Janet Yellen and Powell never had a conversation is ludicrous. To think that the vice chair of the Fed went over to the Biden administration, to think that there's not conversation is crazy. And the question is like, can we have a conversation that makes the economy better? That, hey, Treasury Secretary, you're really going to cut spending? And it looks like, the Treasury Secretary is handing over the keys to, at least to Elon, to look at all this spending and figure out, is there a way to gather this data and figure out where the spend is going more rapidly than these old archaic systems would have ever told us? So I think we're on the right track. I think there's just going to be a lot of noise. And I don't think people need to worry about, the man that's got $400 billion net worth looking at their banking information. You're going to be okay. He does not have to draw into your check or my check or anybody's check. He doesn't need more money. What he's trying to figure out is like, he's building all these businesses, and he has an end goal of sustainable humanity on multiple planets. And like, are we going to have a pathway to get there? Are we going to spend ourselves into becoming, Venezuela or the old Argentina? And, and that's what I think we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. So do you think do you think this will last for 90 days? Do you think or 100, the famous 100 days? Do you think the chaos that we're in now will last for that whole time? Do you think it will relax after a bit? Do you think, I mean, it won't go for 4 years. Nobody could sustain it. But do you think I mean, the VIX actually dropped today.
Yeah, I mean, Doge says that they want to exit July, whatever 4th or 1st of 2026.
Right.
So they put a date on themselves, which is smart. I think a lot of the shock and awe, the executive orders, I think a lot of that's going to get out of the way in the first several weeks, and I just think we need an understanding of how the work is going to be done, and we just need to like calm down the populace. And again, we need one side to just not to stop creating tension and stress in people, like literally just fabricating it, like not even knowing what they're talking about, and they're just creating the stress in people. And we just need to figure out whether you're Republican or Democrat, like how do we spend less money and make make our country, healthy and financially healthy. So anyway, so we'll see where it goes. I think a lot of people want the right thing. If you to poll them the right way, I think everybody wants to figure out how to do this the right way. I just think our identity politics are just getting in the way of everything. Like everybody, it's just so polarizing for people that like progress, they're being blinded by ideology and they want to be blinded to the point where they don't make progress and get to the end. They would rather just be blinded by ideology. And when I look at the last administration, I had a kind of a watchful eye on the infrastructure spend we were doing, the CHIPS Act, and some of the things that we were doing. And I'm like, okay, well, this is, if done properly, this could put us in a kind of direction we need to go on. And I just think we need more of that. I just think we need to figure out. I was very critical of the prior administration, but at the same time, there's things they did that I think would get us on the right track. So yeah, but we're super polarized. I just think we need to figure it out. I think, by the way, I think the media is responsible for amplifying
Yes.
every situation and really polarizing the public. I think political figures, it's almost like they need that 8.5 by 11 sheet in front of them. Okay, what did you accomplish this week? Like, what did you do, and
Or
what
the
are you doing next
adulation,
week?
or the adulation from the crowd that's all worked up.
Yeah.
They're shouting
Like,
and
did you do something? Did you write legislation? Did
yeah,
you solve a problem for your constituents? Like, what did you do? And we have people that, from all levels of intellect that are in these 435 congressional roles. And I'm saying this is on both sides too. I'm not just saying it's one side or another.
sure.
And I just think we pay for this government. We need accountability. We need productivity. You're a factory person. I'm a like we need accountability and productivity. We need output.
Yeah.
And if we don't get output, then we have to figure out how we're replacing people to get the output. So I'd love to see us get more serious about manufacturing in this country. I am concerned. There are some of the tariffs that concern me in their applications. So I hope we don't, for example, I hope we don't throw a tariff on Taiwan because we're buying, they appear on the graph. We're buying $70 billion worth of goods from them.
Yeah.
And I just hope we don't throw a tariff on them because like, oh, we're buying too many chips and we need to make our own chips. Well, guess what? TSMC Arizona has about a year. First off, it's just doing customer trials. The reporting, like people don't understand when they see reporting, like, oh, they're building samples. Like that's not a qualified fab. It's not running at rate or anything. And then there's no packaging facility in the United States. So when TSMC Arizona builds, when they build, they've got to go ship to TSMC or to another site in Taiwan or Amcor, for example, for packaging, final test and packaging. It's got to go to Asia. And then most of the homes where these products go into, these chips go into, are built in Asia.
Sure. Right.
So none of that stuff has been properly thought through and vetted. Like there's no reason at all that the CHIPS Act could not have kicked off a tier 1, tier 2 OEM supply chain loop where it's like, all right, we're going to build all these chips. Where are they going into? They're going into server racks.
Yeah.
They're going into consumer electronics. They're going into cars.
Right.
And how do we get all that stuff onshore? Because even a lot of the people making the circuit boards for cars, they're doing that offshore too.
Right.
And all that manufacturing technology is automated, which makes no sense to me. Like why you'd have to even do that offshore. That's why one of the reasons Starlink has that huge facility in Bastrop. It's all automated tech to build those. So anyway, I'm kind of going all over the place. I think in general, we just need the government to work for us. We need more manufacturing in the U.S. More manufacturing is going to create. I've seen what it does to people's lives. I've seen what it's done to my lives. You've seen what done to your life. When you create manufacturing, you create a multi-tiered structure for people to move up into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of people think like you create a factory and you just have 5,000 jobs of like people on the job putting bottle caps on bottles like the Laverne and Shirley episode. Right. And that's just not the case. You've got the operators on the line, then you built up a tier of technicians, you build up people that analyze product, you build up tooling people, then you build up supervisors, you build up, site directors, you build up all kinds of levels of management and for people to move up. You build a ladder,
Mhm.
and it's really what we need more of in this country.
All right. Well, since we're in the middle of the factory now, I want to take one example from what the Trump administration is doing right now, which is right in my bailiwick, which is the most recent department that they're talking about killing because everybody's up in arms because employees are going to die because we're going to get rid of OSHA. So there's going to be
Yeah,
this horrible, horrible situation if OSHA goes away. My experience, I'm just going to say my experience. My experience is the number one person that was interested in my employee safety was my insurance company. They were
yeah,
the most likely to come on site. They were the most likely to come in and tell me I had to put something here, put a sign here, change the way that I did this, make sure that my floors were whatever it was my insurance company. It had nothing to do
right.
with any government group at all. They didn't want my employees to get hurt. It was really important to them. After my insurance company was the fire department. The fire department was there a couple times a year, and they were very interested in not only fire, but they had a whole bunch of other stuff that they were looking for. I don't think I ever had a state agency on my premises in 27 years, 100 employee business. I don't think I ever had an estate. I had OSHA on my property once because we had a spill. That was it in 27 years. So it had nothing to do with OSHA, had nothing to do with the state. It was all about my insurance company and the city.
Yeah, and this is something too where, the requirements and the regulatory buildup, you have regulatory buildup all over the place, and all of a sudden you're making machines that have, kind of every safety, you know, you can possibly imagine. Now you've outlawed certain chemicals from even entering a factory. So you don't have to worry about, you've got all the eyewear on you, but you don't have to worry about some of these things. But then you leave all the other regulatory framework on the end. You leave OSHA, you leave all these other things. And this is where you have, regulations on top of regulations. And yeah, if you have an OSHA issue, like, are you really is their first call to the federal government? If you have a spill type, is that really your first call, or can there be a more of a local framework? And with the advent of just computer systems, AI, and just like in best practices, are there other ways to regulate and support these things? So yeah, there's just once you put regulations in place, I'm a big fan of them having an expiration date where they come up for a review, and we just don't have that framework. And I think that's what we need. It should be milk. It should be like, you buy it and you only have a certain period of time
Right.
to use it until you can make something better. Maybe design it out. Maybe there's other things that we can do, but the more checks you turn into, you turn product development manufacturing into a library, and you turn it into this, you tie everything down with all these versus, trying to figure it out how to design design your factories, design your processes more intelligently so that you don't need all these things. So, and this is why we have to be careful too of like what other countries are doing, and are they setting themselves up to be more successful? Can they make better products? Can they move quicker because of their regulatory framework versus ours? And we're all looking for positive outcomes. We want to keep our people safe too. So, I mean, there have to be goals and tension on regulatory. You can't just say I want the fastest times, and I want no oversight. You
That's
have to have goals and tension. And I think if you do, what goals and tension are basically, you have a goal that kind of pulls you in either direction. So you're kind of doing the right thing. I always think of the term of like quality and productivity. Like if
Mhm.
you're pushing an operator on the line, what you want to do is you want to push them to produce more passing units versus just driving more input through the station and then maybe failing more because they're just getting sloppy. The same thing without an operator with automation. You want to push the automation speed to a point where you're getting faster good product out and not just more bad products. So same thing with regulation. Can you do it in tension? Can you put goals and a regulatory intention? So yeah, I don't know where we're going with that, but yeah.
No, I was using it. I was using it as a example So,
Yeah,
you know,
no,
if we're looking at throwing out USAID, if we're looking at throwing out the Department of Education, if we're looking at throwing, you know, a lot of the things that they're looking at throwing out are just duplicative. The Department of Education. Have a professor for a wife, and she thinks we should have thrown out the Department of Education during Reagan. Um, you know, but even if it's doing an okay job, which I don't think it is, she doesn't think it is. If the Department of Education is doing a good job, is it really just duplicating things that are done at the state level, the county level, the city level, and at the school level that just not
yeah.
necessary?
Well, I mean, your wife's more qualified to speak on this than probably either of us. But, and I'm not, but the whole thing you brought up of a duplicative chain of events, these are the things you think about when you're designing the manufacturing product to build something. And this is where companies get caught up. I work with companies that are so risk averse that they'll literally test the same thing 3 times in a row, but they'd never added any value between the test steps. So I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like why would you retest the same thing when you never added value or altered that area of the design? And this is something Tesla is really good at is deleting that and really getting it down to, the bare kind of minimum things to do to make sure you've got product integrity. But yeah, it's there's going to be one example after another. Um, and with aid, like with foreign aid, I mean, again, we're I don't know if we can solve world hunger here, but like everything is not created equally. So the pottery class for wherever is not the same thing as, we're I don't know, some sort of virus medication for wherever. I think those things are at different priority levels. And I think we just need to have like, if I were Doge, like, why can't we go through all of the aid we hand out and let's start tagging them? Priority 0, which is the highest priority. And then you have this priority 1, 2, and 3 stuff. This priority 3 stuff, like these DEI comic books and things like that. Like that has to be a lower priority. Like sane people have to say, like, these things are a lower priority.
Yeah.
But if it's something related to our national defense and it's some sort of installation related to our national defense, well, that probably is going to be a P0 priority depending on what it is. But we have the mindset of like all aid is not equal. And so like ripping the band-aid off of this and looking at this thing is the right thing to do.
Yep. Oh, absolutely right. Okay, so let's take another look at today's stock market action and ask the question, what else was going on? Some people are suggesting that it was the European numbers that came out over the last couple of days that it kind of just started piling on. First we heard that Germany numbers were down, and then French numbers were down, and then I don't know if that was the right order, but after a bunch of
California.
them, yeah, it looked, and then California numbers. So what do you think? Do you think that was a piece that looked like it might have been the second leg today? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, possibly, but I mean, I think the companies also calibrated the story around autonomy and humanoids. So if we're not losing our mind from missing top line, missing bottom line, missing gross margins, then why are we looking at month one data from Germany and losing our minds? I mean, we're clearly down in Europe, and but there's other bright areas. We're introducing new products, so I think this quarter is going to be messy, and I think they kind of said that on the earnings call, but they weren't explicit enough.
Right, right.
And I think they just need to be very clear that lines are going to be down, tooling's going to be down, products are going to be transitioning to the new Model Y in multiple lines and multiple factories, and we just have to be very clear on that. And then uh, yeah, and then we kind of just have to then they have to we need I mean have a battery conversation with your investors, like what's going on. You mentioned it on the call. Well, what does it mean? Does it mean we can produce, only what we built last year? Does it mean we can do 10% more? Like, we don't know what level you're constrained to. We don't know if you're talking about constraints to your capacity level, which is almost 3 million, or is this capacity to a decently utilized rate of like 80%. So maybe 2.5, 2.6 million. Like, what are you constrained to on batteries, and what's the plan? So yeah, but today I just look at when I see 56 million units, I see an average of 91 million units. I'm like, okay, that's not small volume, but it's pretty small.
Pretty small volume.
It's certainly not large. It's certainly not, I wouldn't even call it like decent volume. To me, decent volume is when you're close on the average.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking what, 30, 40% below average. I just say it's a low volume day. I think everybody in the markets were, again, it's hard to me to say, but just all this activity around AMD, all this activity around, we wake up and realize that Nvidia really has a business now that, three of the four major hyperscalers have come out, not only reaffirmed their capex, they're increasing it. Google went from 59 billion in capex spend to 75 this year. I mean, these are huge jumps. And yeah, that's probably one of the most, if it, Tesla has a lot of people covering it on X and a lot of people talking about it on YouTube. Nvidia less so, but it's probably one of the worst covered names on X. The and on FinTech TV, just this dialogue about AI digestion phase, and it's just really a lot of people that are interviewed that don't know a lot.
Well,
I don't know how to be more polite about it.
I think that's right though, because I've said this on my channel before, but I'll just say it again because there's always new people. I looked at Nvidia 4 months ago, 5 months ago for the first time, really, right? It was going up like crazy.
Yeah.
I don't have a computer science degree. Shoot, I didn't even take calculus. I might be really, really good at arithmetic, but hey, I know nothing about mathematics. So, so,
You don't need to.
but you do to understand so you show me a brand new product on the shelf at Walmart, I'll tell you really quickly whether I think that's a good company or not. You show me a good car, I'll probably be able to give you some pretty good idea about whether I think it'll sell because I'm a product guy. Okay. But you show me a computer chip,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know. And you say, well, they're going to sell 10 times more next year than they did this year. And I'm going, how do I know that? What in my
Yeah.
experience base is there for
Yeah.
me to have a clue as to whether they'll sell 10 times more, three
Yeah.
times?
Yeah, there's an answer. It's this supply chain, and it's going upstream. And I've worked in the supply chain. I understand it very well, and that is the signal in this whole thing. With the talking heads on TV of like, I think this is going to happen, I think that's going to happen. You don't even need to be an expert in AI. You just have to know that the amount you have to watch the capacity increasing, okay? And you have to know that these operators, they're pulling fabs in on the wafer side. They're pulling in packaging capacity on the chip on wafer and substrate side. And you see that, and they're doing it at this voracious pace. And it's key, like there's install dates, they're coming up, they're getting pulled in. There's By the end of this year, they're trying to double their chip on wafer on substrate capacity, which would have been a triple from 2 years ago. And you're at this pace where it's like, okay, could something happen? Sure. But and is the silicon industry generally cyclical? Sure, it is. But you're not at the end of the cycle when your upstream supply chain is adding
Rampant.
capacity at the rate. They're not going up 10%. They're not going up 20%. They're doubling. And this is what I don't think people understand. So when I hear the demand noise on fintech, or I hear the DeepSeek noise on fintech, what I want to do is I want to go to the supply chain and say, are you still pulling that wafer fab in? Are you
Mhm.
still adding that packaging capacity? Did you flinch? Did anything move?
Mhm.
Now, am I going to know every no, I'm not going to know daily every move, but there's enough data sources out there to know, is this capacity still going in? And is there pressure to pull it in? The people that install that capacity, the people that are making the ASML machines, the lithography machines for producing these chips, those people have people on their teams that are going upstream all the way to the Googles, all the way to the Amazons, and they are doing their homework like you would not believe. They are double, triple, quadruple checking demand. I'm not saying it's infallible. I'm not giving investment advice to people. My only advice to people would be is don't just listen to the talking heads and make a move. Like if you're doing anything related to the silicon chipset industry, you got to look upstream in the supply chain. It's like people ask me like, what do you think's happening with iPhone? Well, I would go look at Skyworks. I would go look at Broadcom. I would go look at a couple of these key areas. I would go look at TSMC for their non-AI, output. There's just a number of things to go look at. So, and this, by the way, I think the analyst community is starved of supply chain talent. And when I say supply chain, I'm not talking about people that just like know inventory.
Oh,
I'm
no,
talking about people that know how products are made
you know
and
who
understand the technical and the operational aspects of it. And if analysts had more of these people on their team, they would be able to decode these things going on with Nvidia. They would be able to decode what's going on with tariffs and how it relates to building Teslas versus building General Motors vehicles. There's two different things happening. I just think it's a missing skill set that's in a lot of these analyst firms that they really need.
All right, well, let me pull on another part of your expertise, though. You are in consumer electronics. It has a word in there. It's called consumer. So you are by necessity being in the C-suite, you have to know the consumer side too. You have to know the demand
Yeah,
side.
yeah,
And what I've been saying for a while now, and I'm not getting many people listening, and you may or may not think I'm onto something. I feel like the world of atoms is shrinking. So you might have more or less manufacturing in the United States, but I don't see it being made up by manufacturing in China, meaning if I did, I would see the truck quantity, I would see the amount of tonnage on the trucks staying the same or going up. I feel as if either the th things are lasting longer, like cell phones definitely are,
true,
cars are lasting longer,
true.
and people aren't buying. I'm over here where my dining room set used to be. And we're old and we still got rid of our dining room set because dining room sets are not in anymore. My kids
Right,
didn't want my Sterling. The kids didn't want my tableware. They didn't want the glassware. All that stuff is out of fashion. So if we're getting into a world where people are not going to buy as much stuff, that's going to impact. And my phone is a flashlight and a go down the list of all the things that it's replaced, camera, etc. So what do you think? Should we be looking at the demographics and also this kind of minimalist way that we're going? Is this something we should be paying a lot more attention to?
I have a great example for this. And first off, the answer is it comes down to the rate of innovation. If your smartphone was doing something more meaningful, like if you take an iPhone 12 and you power up an iPhone 12 with 2020 software in it, iPhone software, 20 from software from 2020, and you power up an iPhone today, a 16 iPhone, same, pro version with today's software, and let's look at the home screen. Everything looks the same. Everything looks the same. It's identical.
Right.
And that's not by to me that is it's not like you should change it, every year or whatever. I'm not talking about changing wallpapers or how the wallpaper moves or the iconography. Like I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the function of a smartphone. Look at how our Teslas changed from 2020 to today. Now you get in your Tesla, you press the voice key and say, I want to go, to Baskin Robbins for ice cream. It pulls up the address. It says FSD, press one button and your car drives. It backs out of a spot and it just drives. That's what we do today. 5 years ago, we had nothing like that. Nothing. And now look at your smartphone from what should have happened with your smartphone from 5 years ago to today is your home screen could have been just one like I don't know, it could have been a speaker icon or just a button. And it could have been, excuse me, it could have been something, like that, where basically you just wake up your phone and you tell it what you want to do.
Are
and
you
it does it.
are you turn on your phone and it automatically goes to the stock page
And
because it knows
yes,
that's where you
and
want
it's
to go
doing
first.
stuff for you exactly in the background. Randy, why can't I turn on my phone and on December whatever 22nd and say, show me the best strategy for tax loss harvesting for my portfolio. Tee up three options, tee up all the trades, go into my trading software and tee them up as potential options, show them to me, show the resultant tax outlay, show what it does, the whole thing, and then give me a button to press to select one. We should have that by now.
Right?
The fact that we have a car that you can just talk to it and it takes you from point A to point B means we could have had what I just described. But the smartphone world never, and I'm from this world, and that world never, the pace of innovation never accelerates. So back to your original question of like, are we going to be buying as much stuff? Well, if you were innovating like crazy and only the next phone did what I described, but the prior phone didn't, you'd have a huge replacement cycle. This is why iPhone 16 does not have a huge replacement cycle because it doesn't do anything meaningfully better than iPhone 15, except false and turn the camera on. Now there's a camera button on the side. I have my camera on nonstop with the viewfinder on, burning through the battery. So you know that is the answer to your question is the pace of innovation has to increase.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So if I took it to my industry and talked about the bicycle industry, we've had this 3-year horror story, but it's been 5 years since there's been any kind of a new idea in bicycle. And it used to be that, you'd have certainly within 5 years, you would have some kind of a fun thing that people would say, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
the
the
same.
Yeti of water bottles or something, something thermal related or something. What? Yeah, I mean, you would know better than anybody. But yeah, to me, it comes down to the pace of innovation, and I think this is why we bring everything back to Tesla. By the time companies can figure out how to make an EV profitably, Tesla's vehicles are going to be driving themselves, and you're going to now have a decision as a Tesla owner, as a vehicle, as a human being on this earth. Do I even want to own a car? Do I just want to hail a taxi, a Tesla robo taxi? And it's just they're going to fundamentally change the industry that they're in.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love that idea. I'm gonna now that's gonna add to my thesis. I always like it when I can add to my thesis. Jeff, as always, we appreciate you coming on, and we're going to now attend to the numbers.
Great.
It's been
Good luck
great.
with that.
All right, bye for
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Randy. Have a good one. We'll see you later.
So what does it look like here? What do we have now? Now that Jeff and I have figured it all out, surely there must be something that we can recommend with regard to that would change things and make things, better than they were yesterday. So let's go ahead and take a look at. We'll start as usual with Tesla. Tesla was down 14 for the day, ended up at 378. So ending up at 378 on that light volume, I think that is probably not really a drop below the 380, but we'll see what that really turns out to mean in the morning. We have the down another $1.81 in the overnight. Now, if we hold that 376, I think there's an awfully good. If we start out tomorrow morning at 376, yeah, we could definitely be down tomorrow. Now, of course, what happens in the overall market could dramatically impact that. Let's go ahead and look at the Dow was down 317, NASDAQ down. I'm sorry, did I say down? I do that. How do I do that? You guys need to correct me. You need to raise your hand. Anyway, the Dow was up 317, NASDAQ up 38, S&P up 23. But what's really more important is what is going on now. But let me just talk about Apple, Google, and Amazon. We're all up. Down. Meta, Microsoft, and Nvidia were all up. And the Cathie Woods were pretty much all, in fact, 100% up today. All right, now we'll look at what's happening, which we'll start with, we'll go ahead and look at the bonds. We're now at 4.426. This is very, very exciting. We're under 4.5. So the next level we're looking for is 4.25. Why 4.25? Because Randy figures that these are psychological, that the bond market trades a lot more around these psychological quarter points, eighth of a point, etc. But in this case, the next I think is going to be 4.25 is the number to look for. But it is up a little bit in the pre-market here, up 0.6 after being down 10 today. Oil market up also a little bit of rebounding off of the low today. We got down to 71 and we're up 18 cents. So 71.21 right now. Brent it's actually at 74.69. So tracking pretty close to Texas Intermediate. Natural gas down again after being up today, down 0.18% at 33.54. The gold is off, so it continues, of course, to approach 3,000. I'm sorry, 2,900. But 28.85 is where it is right now. Silver 32.78. It was at over 33 earlier, so down 0.58. And copper at 4.48, a little bit up actually, 0.81. Showing a little bit of action toward the top. The dollar actually did slide a little bit today against most currencies, and Bitcoin down 2,054 at 96,636. So that is a continuation of the slide. Stock futures, little changed, it says. Well, I don't know. Wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong place. Yes, here we go. The stock futures, very little changed. Dow up 21, S&P up 0.75, NASDAQ down 10.25. Dow is 0.05% up, and S&P, call it flat even, NASDAQ down 0.05. So very, very, very flat in terms of the pre-market for all of the stocks, the equities. All right. So what do we think is going to happen tomorrow? Well, we've got some more reports tomorrow, but I think tomorrow is going to be flat because we got the big labor numbers coming in on Friday. So even though there's a couple of interesting numbers coming in tomorrow, I think GDP comes in tomorrow. No, yes, GDP tomorrow, productivity on Friday. I think that's the way it goes. So we got some interesting things coming tomorrow, but I think everybody's gonna be waiting for the labor numbers on Friday. So I'd be looking for a kind of flattish market tomorrow. With regard to Tesla, yeah, I think Jeff made a good point, low volume, but it did end on its low. Yeah, again, we're going to be in this trading range for a very long time. Get used to it. I know. Randy, what do you know? We could go to 500 in like 3 days. Okay, but I really believe we will be in this trading range until there's significant news. That's just really, really what I believe. And what is my final opinion with regard to how much of an effect the Elon Musk negative press right now is contributing to the stock price? Very, very little. Very, very little. I think it's a trading range. I think we're going to be in the trading range. I think that all the chaos in DC is impacting all stocks right now. But I think really paying attention to the fact that the VIX is hanging in there, is not showing a lot of fear, tells me that the market, and actually been listening to a few commentators, not just regular commentators, people like Jamie Dimon and stuff. It wasn't Jamie Dimon, but individuals like that. They like what Trump is doing. And so I think the guys, the really smart guys, recognize that this is exactly what has to be done. I agree with that. I think Jeff agrees with it. Yeah, do we agree with 100% of every single thing that Trump does it exactly the way that he does it? Of course not. But by and large, this is the right direction. Okay, I think that's it. Let me say adieu. And later on tonight, Brian Wang. We've already recorded it. Fantastic video. He and I we just had a blast. So that'll be at 7:45. So go ahead and check on that at 7:45 Pacific time, of course. And other than that, it has been great talking to you. I can never find the place to turn it off. I know. How old am I that I can't even find the button to turn this thing off?